Beautiful Days, Super Danganronpa 2, Super High School Level Friendship. Story by Onogami Mea. Illustration by Fujiwara Ryo. Some time had passed since the school trip of mutual killing began on Jabberwock Island. Those who were intended to be classmates at Hope's Peak Academy had only just barely gotten acquainted. It was awkward at first, but now that they were familiar with each other's respective personalities, they had started to group off with those they got along with the best. This was made clear by the seating arrangements at breakfast every morning. Lacking any instructions, the Japanese students had fallen naturally into alternating seats between boys and girls, but now they had begun to finalize who sat next to who. Amidst the clinks of utensils and plates, the restaurant on the second floor of the Hotel Mirai was filled with the sounds of idle, pleasant conversation. If it weren't for the mutual killing, this might be a normal school trip. Or maybe it was like lunchtime at school, back in middle school. As Hinata Hajime spaced out, sorting through his fuzzy memories, a tall figure came to stand before him. His antenna stood on end, expressing his tension.
"Good morning, Hinata-kun."
That characteristic swaying hair and bright voice had to be Komaeda Nagito. Perhaps because of his eccentric special talent, more than being close to any particular person, he seemed to swim through the group as aimlessly as his hairstyle. But lately, it was Hinata he was following around at random, asking,
"By the way, Hinata-kun, haven't you remembered your talent yet?"
"I don't remember." In response to Hinata's blunt sullenness, Komaeda only calmly sat down in the seat across from him, where Soda Kazuichi had been sitting up until just a moment ago. Incidentally, Soda had gone off to see Sonia Nevermind, interrupting her conversation with the other girls to offer the gentlemanly suggestion of, "Shall we get dessert?" which Sonia refused with a smile. He seemed to be happy enough given the circumstances.
"I see. That's too bad,"
Komaeda murmured, seemingly genuine, before beginning to eat his food. Hinata poked at his salad, glancing over at Soda, who was still stubbornly talking to Sonia. If only he would get back here already, and maybe he could do something about this awkward atmosphere. If he would even just talk to me, then at least I'd have an excuse to get up from my seat. Or just anybody. Even Sayonji Hyoko, picking apart everything. That would be fine. But Hinata's wishes were in vain, as just a few minutes later, Komaeda asked the same question again.
"So how about it? Have you remembered it yet?"
"I told you, I don't remember." His tone was even more clipped than before, but Komaeda, ever nonchalant, was unperturbed.
"I see. That's really too bad."
He sighed, as if he really did find it unfortunate from the bottom of his heart. Whenever he looked so dejected, Hinata's unease would transform into sheer irritation, and so he glared at Komaeda. "Soda may take the cake, but you're pretty stubborn too, Komaeda. You're the one who said something in the first place like, there's no rush, so why are you so—"
"I mean, yours is the only talent we still don't know, Hinata-kun. Thinking ahead, we need all the useful information we can get, right? For someone like me, who doesn't have any better talent than something as insignificant as good luck, I have a great interest in everyone else's super high school level talents."
Crap, Hinata thought. Too late. Komaeda's eyes were starting to get a dangerous glint to them.
"For now, we could try thinking about if you had the same sort of talent as one of the others."
Ignoring Hinata, who had now completely missed his opportunity to get up out of his seat, Komaeda waved his fork in the air and commenced his reasoning.
"Super high school level cook. That can't be it. I've never seen you try to cook, Hinata-kun."
"We have our food prepared for us like this every day, so I don't need to. It's pointless." His own reply was snappish enough to make himself wince, but the rebuttal was still casual.
"But I think Hanamura-kun makes his own stuff on the side. Although, in his case, he has seduction as an excuse. Then, super high school level air. That can't be it either. No offense, but unlike Togami-kun, you just don't look like an heir at all, Hinata-kun."
No talent as a cook. No talent as an heir. These words, eliminating possibilities, wore down Hinata's pride and made him impatient.
I get it. I can't cook and I don't have any leadership skills.
As Hinata flared up, voice becoming more rough, he could tell that several of the others were looking over at him in surprise. But Komaeda, the person it was directed at, just cheerfully assented.
You're definitely lacking in weight and force of presence, too. But doesn't it bother you, too? Not knowing what your own talent is?
He was hitting Hinata where it hurt, staring at him fixedly with those almond-shaped eyes, while Hinata found himself unable to argue. Komaeda's hair swayed freely, his attitude was frivolous, and he never showed anything one could grab onto. But when it came to talent, when it came to hope, he was bizarrely straightforward. Enough that he easily upset Hinata, who had lost the anchor of his own talent, unlike everyone else.
I told you I don't remember! Lay off already!
The instant he slammed the table, overcome by emotion, a loud noise rang out that surprised even himself. Even Owari Akane, who had been entirely focused on stuffing roast beef into her mouth since early morning, looked over with eyes wide.
What have you guys been doing? Are you fighting? Jeez, that's boys for you.
Koizumi Mahiru spouted out her usual phrases in shock, but Kuzuryu Fuyuhiko seemed pretty smug as he said,
Looks like you guys are really getting into it. Sorry, Hinata-kun. Are you mad at me?
In the now quiet restaurant, Komaeda's apology rang insincere. Hinata had already been made aware again of his own awkwardness, but that nonchalance was adding insult to injury.
Do you even need to ask?
As Hinata silently started to get up, Komaeda gave him a bitter smile, and then he picked up his tray and nimbly stood up from his seat.
Sorry for getting in your way. I'll go away now so you can sit back down, Hinata-kun. I'm really sorry.
He quickly lowered his head and moved away from the table alone. But in the end, Hinata also stood up from his seat, leaving his half-eaten breakfast behind and exiting the restaurant. After the uncomfortable breakfast incident, Komaeda stopped tagging along with Hinata. He stopped peppering Hinata with the questions from before and didn't come over to chat. He even stayed out of Hinata's sight. Perhaps he was deliberately eating meals at a different time, since today, too, they didn't cross paths at breakfast time.
That guy takes everything to the extreme.
Squinting in the strong morning sunlight, Hinata muttered to himself with a weary expression. He looked over at the cottages lined up, for no real reason, and finally looked straight ahead again, letting out a sigh. Then he felt something poking into the sweat-stained back of his shirt.
What?
He whirled around in shock, and saw that the one who surprised him was a girl, leisurely tilting her head. It was Nanami Chiaki, the one who always looked sleepy, maybe because she played too many video games.
What's wrong, Hinata-kun? Did you need Komaeda-kun for something? No, I mean, it's not like I need him for anything.
He waved his hands in a broad gesture of denial, and Nanami rubbed her eyes as she pointed out,
Really? But you've been standing in front of Komaeda's cottage for a long time, out in the heat, right? Does that mean you've been here too? At least put your hood up properly so you don't get heat stroke.
Nanami was an indoors type, always stuck to some kind of gaming console. If the sun's rays were even making him a little dizzy, then there's no way it would be good for her to stay out in them for long. So he gave a warning that made Nanami blink in surprise, before she obediently pulled up her cat-eared hood.
Thanks. Anyway, Hinata-kun, could it be that the argument you had with Komaeda-kun the other day has been weighing on your mind?
His head slumped automatically at the awkwardness of her hitting the bullseye.
Were you listening to that? Everybody could hear it.
Nanami usually played the fool, but when she played the straight man, there was no escaping her serious expression. For the time being, Hinata ushered Nanami over in front of Togami's cottage nearby. At least there they would be in the shade.
I think I might have been pretty immature myself, but ever since then, I haven't even seen him,
he said reluctantly, casting a glance over at Komaeda's cottage next door.
With Komaeda, you can't tell if that guy's shameless or delicate. But if it's my fault that he's shutting himself up in his room, then I don't know, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, you know?
Komaida was generous by nature, and he could show a lot of consideration for others, but sometimes he spouted some shockingly negative stuff without batting an eyelash. He'd been acting pretty frivolous last time too, but was that really how he felt deep down?
Not to mention, he's not the kind of person who's close to anyone in particular. He hangs out with the boys and the girls just the same, but he acts kind of like an outsider. He just fawns over everyone's talents without thinking of himself as another person with the same kind of talent. To put it simply, you're worried about him.
Hinata faltered in response to that frank summary.
Well, I mean, up until then, he just wouldn't leave me alone. It's strange that he's suddenly stopped coming around. You're a kind person, Hinata-kun. Maybe your talent is as the super high school level helper.
Nanami giggled, a gentle expression on her face.
Lay off, or it might actually come true.
When he thought about where he stood with the other intensely individualistic members of the class, he feared she might not be wrong. He waved it off with a grimace, and she smiled a little again, before adopting a thoughtful expression, like she was racking her brain.
But you don't have to worry about Komaida-kun, I think.
Hinata smiled bitterly at her surprisingly cold response.
I guess you're too unpredictable for me to understand, too. But I can't help it. I mean, when you're not around, Komaida-kun's asking around about your talent, Hinata-kun.
Hinata headed towards the beach as the sand shone white in the lively sunlight, echoing his bellows.
Quit messing around, Komaida! Hinata-san!
The one who answered him wasn't Komaida, but Sonia, who had been talking to him. Abandoning her habitual queenly composure, she dashed up, kicking off the sand, and began firing off words like a machine gun.
What an awful, evil magistrate you are, Hinata-san! You were far too cold and heartless to Komaida-san when he was full of nothing but pure interest in your talent. She's right! You're a total meanie-weenie head, Hajime-chan!
Even Miyoda Ibuki came from the side to back Sonia up.
Maybe Nagito-chan really was totally tactless. But he was just thinking of you, Hajime-chan. That means it was his friendship power. When you're faced with a burning soul like that, then BAM! You should suddenly remember at least one or two talents.
With Sonia's intensity being dialed up, Miyoda's intensity dial basically always on this setting, and both of them drawing closer, Hinata became overwhelmed. On top of all that, Soda came up from behind the two of them, shooting him a glare that smacked of bitterness as he said, "Hey, Sonia-san's trying to talk to you, asshole!"
Sorry, Hinata-kun.
Komaida himself also drew closer, looking somehow apologetic.
I was too persistent the other day, and I made you mad. So I thought I would try asking everyone else if they noticed anything, instead of bothering you anymore. People with super high school level talents would have a different perspective than me. That again.
Before he could reference the now familiar self-deprecating language at all, Sonia called out forcefully,
"Hinata-san!"
as she peered in his face. Those eyes, clear as a jewel, drew nearer into his personal space, and he reflexively leaned back from the force of her gaze.
Do you not wish to remember your own talent, Hinata-san?
The straightforwardness of the question just made it even more piercing to his heart.
No, that's... Of course it's bothering me. I want to remember for myself, too. Therefore, is this not the perfect time to become as one with Komaida-san and combine your powers to remember?
When she made her argument with her queenly charisma in full throttle, there was no way he could say no. As Hinata was left unable to answer, Sonia pressed harder.
That was rather well said, don't you think? Don't wait until your parents are dead and gone to seek to resolve your regrets. They're totally unrelated to this situation. She means you should live with no regrets! I guess that's the gist of it anyway.
Komaida casually agreed with Miyoda's blunt summary, just as Hinata was about to shoot back with something like,
"It was your fault in the first place."
He heard a voice from behind him that was so low, it felt like it was crawling along the ground.
Looks like you're getting along pretty well with Sonia-san, Hinata.
It was Soda, eyes filled with jealousy. Faced with the ominous intensity of that anger flying at him, Hinata frantically started explaining.
No, see, I'm talking to Miota too.
Kenneth! You don't need to attack him or boasting. Shit, should I have gotten hit by some amnesia too? Man of Mystery must be popular.
Hey, you realize I didn't get amnesia so I could be more popular, right?
Even if he lectured Soda on how he shouldn't overlook that, Soda wasn't willing to listen right now.
Put a lid on it! Anyway, Sonia-san, please just leave it to the genius mechanic. I'll get this guy's memory back in a flash.
Soda was a pain when it came to romantic relationships, but he too possessed a super high school level talent.
Just wait a bit,
he said, dashing off. But before too long, he was back, carrying a mysterious machine that looked like a pair of large headphones.
Try this on, Hinata.
It looked like it was supposed to be worn on the head, but Hinata kept his hands where they were, nervously asking,
What is this?
A memory regeneration machine, obviously. The straightforward name betrayed the depth of Soda's anger.
Just put it on! Then just wait 3 minutes, and your memories will come back!
What, is it like cup ramen or something? The explanation was also a little too rudimentary. Before Hinata could protest further, and without waiting for permission, Soda started setting it up on Hinata's head. Then, when Sonia and Miota came over, curious to see what was going on, he turned to them with an extraordinary smile on his face.
Now, please watch! Sonia-san in particular. This is Hinata's Memory Regeneration Spectacular! Don't turn someone's amnesia into a show!
Standing behind Hinata, Kamase smiled brightly and said,
Hinata-kun, that machine really suits you!
The instant Hinata remembered,
that's right. He's the one I came to bring my complaints to.
A sound like a cheap, cartoonish explosion rang out, and the memory regeneration machine shattered into pieces.
Japanese drifters!
Covering her ears to protect them from the noise of the blast, Sonia watched wide-eyed as Hinata coughed up black smoke.
Are you all right, Hinata-kun? Thank goodness. You're a little singed, but it doesn't seem like it's anything serious.
Kamase, familiar with injury, wiped off the soot from Hinata's face, but Miota clutched her stomach and burst into laughter.
Not bad! Ibuki's kinda into the explosive punchline. At first glance, you seem like a man of mystery, but in reality, you're just a man of mistakes! That's the good stuff! Shut up!
Soda looked like he was on the verge of tears from the hit to his pride, but Hinata was the one who really wanted to cry. Hinata shook off Kamase's hand, ignored Soda's frantic excuses, and left them both behind. Kamase chased after him, shyly asking,
How is it, Hinata-kun? Did your memories return? More like I probably could have lost more. God damn it, I'm not sticking around here. I'm going back to my room.
If only he really had forgotten about Kamase. He was walking back to the cottage, spreading out his aura of anger as he went, when a girl with uneven black hair called out to him,
Hinata-san, is now a bad time?
Sumiki. Once he recognized her as Sumiki Mikan, Hinata softened his demeanor a bit. She was timid on the best of days, so it was obvious why she called out to him, even when he clearly looked so sullen. She was the super high school level nurse, after all. Are you going to patch me up? Thanks, but I'm really not hurt that bad.
The only thing I can use to help you out is some bad medicine. I'm sorry for being born!
If you already know the medicine is bad, then I completely refuse! He retorted reflexively, internally cursing his own naivete. Hinata felt a little like crying again when, beside him, Kamase shrank back apologetically. Sorry, Hinata-kun. I was a little overly desperate when I was asking around, so...
Yes, that's right! That Kamase-san! He was so serious! Lately, medical professionals have been stressing the importance of mental health!
So why don't you stress the importance of my mental health? Hinata muttered weakly. Sumiki ignored him, looking down at the small syringe she now suddenly had in her hand with fascination.
It's all right. It will only hurt for a little bit.
effects might last for the rest of your life.
Hey! When he extended a hand to try and press her on that disturbing statement, it was caught by her flexible fingers. There was a damp, cool sensation that made him nervous for a moment, and he felt her gaze traveling up his short-sleeved arm, seeking a target.
I spot a thick vein. Now, Hinata-san, it will just be a little prick, okay?
Not okay! I don't mind a prick that lasts just for a little bit, but I do mind after effects that last for the rest of my life! Hinata shook his head back and forth, but Sumiki looked at him with a smile like she was trying to pacify a spoiled child. Unlike Komaeda, she was very straightforward about her self-deprecation, but in the end, she was still a student whose talent was recognized by Hope's Peak Academy. She was strongest on her own turf.
Like I said, it's okay. The risk is less than 70%.
But she was also a klutz.
Hey, Sumiki!
While she was still grabbing onto Hinata's arm, Sumiki's foot slipped on the sand, and both he and Komaeda had to hurriedly avert their gaze from her magnificent display of clumsiness. Just like every other time, her tumble was suggestive enough that they couldn't help but suspect she was doing this on purpose. As an added bonus, her expression couldn't be described as anything but tempting. The area around her eyes was faintly red, and she was even drooling a little.
I'm okay. The stars are so pretty tonight.
Perhaps her wrists had gotten twisted around when she fell. Syringe stuck in her right hand, Sumiki gazed out at the ocean, tripping balls. Hinata exchanged looks with Komaeda, and for once, they seemed to be on the same page. That is, they both left, pretending they hadn't seen anything.
How desperate did you sound again when you were talking about me behind my back? Well, no one can resist the jumping kowtow.
Hinata was exchanging covert whispers with the brightly smiling Komaeda when the world turned dark in front of his eyes. He looked up, startled, and saw a massive chest blocking his path.
What? Are you trying to pull a fast one?
It was Nidai Nekomaru, a large, very muscular man who coincidentally suited the beach well. Next to him was Owari, her brown skin glistening.
But memories are very delicate things. If we have to pull a fast one on someone in order to get them back properly, the ends will justify the means.
Komaeda argued back, the way he always did. Even a hasty,
"Ah, you idiot!"
was added too late.
Ha! Poppycock! The way to fix amnesia is obvious! Hey, Owari?
Yeah! Owari answered powerfully before they had the chance to escape.
Chris, you gotta do some intense exercise for shock therapy. It doesn't have to be intense exercise, does it?
Hinata retorted instinctively, and it was too late to regret it. Hinata had lost his opportunity to escape, and Nidai gripped onto his wrist with resounding laughter.
Ha ha! Don't go spouting nonsense! You'll get your memory back, and you'll have done some training! So you'll be killing two birds with one stone! Let's go, Owari! First, let's run from one end of the beach to the other!
Put some muscle into it, Hinata. Your feet are gonna sink into the sand. Ready? Go!
As soon as she said it, Owari broke into a run at terrifying speed. Not to be outdone, Nidai relaxed his muscular grip on Hinata and followed after her.
Hinata-kun! Do your best!
Was this a result of his ability too? When Hinata heard Komaeda cheering him on from high ground, from where he was shrewdly watching the spectacle without concern, he thought to himself, "One of these days, I'm going to kill you." The sweat streaming down his entire body made a person-shaped puddle in the sand. As Hinata crouched down, wheezing from deep in his throat, he made note of the conclusions he had come to.
sprinting at full speed isn't gonna make my memories come back or anything. Hinata-kun, are you all right? Here, I brought you some water.
Hinata snatched the cup that Kamase was kindly holding out to him, draining the contents of the cup in one go before glaring over at him. Incidentally, after Hinata had collapsed after 2 trips around the beach, Nidai and Owari had easily abandoned him with a dismissal of, "How sloppy!" continuing their training without him.
This is your fault.
You seem to be suffering, Hinata Hajime. Just as he tried to yell with his scratchy voice, Tanaka Gundam called out to him with timing that almost seemed planned. He was the kind of guy who put a lot of thought into dramatics, so maybe it really had been planned.
What? Don't tell me. You're gonna use some kind of weird magic to make my memories come back?
Correct! With my ability, I may intervene with the Akashic records and peruse the poetry of forgotten history. Tanaka nodded, brimming with confidence, and then thrust forward his bandaged left hand, a wicked smile appearing on his face. Now, remember, Hinata, the days in which my right arm of shadows ran together with the antenna of fury across the scorched earth.
Don't fabricate memories that never existed in the first place.
Thankfully, Tanaka was the super high school level breeder, not delusional nerd, so probably he couldn't actually fabricate memories. Even knowing that, he couldn't help shouting in response. His body and willpower were already at their limit, so he wished that people would stop meddling in his affairs one after the other. Fabricate, you say? It is not impossible that you would wish to believe that. The memories of that abominable battle... Whoa! As Tanaka shamelessly kept unfurling his delusions of previous incarnations, a short figure collided with him indirectly from behind. The hamsters wrapped up in his scarf tumbled out at the impact, and Tanaka cried out in a pathetic voice, "Jumpy! Champy!"
Weak. What an amateur final spurt. Hey, out of the way!
Brushing Tanaka aside, Kuzuryu appeared, along with Pekuyama Peko for some reason.
Yes, it certainly was clumsy.
Kuzuryu had an aura of impropriety, and Pekuyama was ready with her shinai. You couldn't get anything but a bad feeling from them.
Wait, you guys, what are you planning? That Kamase bastard wouldn't shut the fuck up, so I thought I'd shut him up a little myself.
And yet it was Hinata that the both of them were looking at.
No! Kuzuryu-kun! Pekuyama-san!
Kamase tried to cut in to stop them, but Kuzuryu smiled thinly, saying,
"Tch! Ain't you the one who begged and bowed your head even though I kept telling you to lay off earlier?"
As expected of the super high school level gangster, he was still forceful, even when his height forced him to turn his face up to look at him.
"It's a request a man made to me when he went so far as to bow his head, so I'm gonna feel awkward refusing it. Right, Pekuyama?"
Yes, and I also have an interest in Hinata's talent. I do not believe he is someone experienced with the martial arts, but considering his chest measurement...
Behind her glasses, Pekuyama's eyes had a dangerous glint that sent a chill up Hinata's spine. An average man was no match for the super high school level swordswoman, and if she seriously threatened him, he got the feeling he wouldn't survive it. The point was, these two had the same idea as Nidai and Owari did. That is, they thought causing bodily harm would make his memory return. This was no joke, and now that specialists at violence like these two were entering the picture, this was going to turn into a school trial.
"Stop! Even Soda and Sumiki wound up hurting me, but my memory still doesn't seem to be coming back."
He tried to stop them, ghastly pale, but they silently closed in on him. Like he said before, Kuzuryu didn't seem to be doing this for Hinata so much as he was trying to snap Komaeda out of his depression as quickly as possible. This really was Komaida's fault. His stomach clenched in anger again. But then, his goddess of salvation appeared.
Wait, what? I wanted to see what the fuss was about, but what in the world happened to you, Hinata? You're in shambles. Why don't you take a last picture to remember him with after he's gone?
It was Koizumi and Saionji. Saionji seemed to have come more to encourage them to swing a decisive blow. But Pekuyama looked a little guilty now that the other girls were right there. She lowered her shinai, saying,
No, we were planning on leaving him even more in shambles, but... Huh? Peko-chan? Why? Oh, is this about the thing that Komaeda was talking about with the sliding kowtow?
Did you go that far? Hinata immediately interjected, but Koizumi stood in front of him, as if protecting him.
Stop it! This is stupid! I'm no expert here, so I can't say for certain, but I really don't think memories are something that will come back if you just hit someone, are they?
Koizumi. Her honest theory was a little too honest, but it brought warmth to Hinata's ragged chest. Her innate kindness was dazzling before her super high school level photography ever was.
Thank you. You're the only person who said something like that.
Stupid! What? Isn't this obvious?
Koizumi's cheeks flushed the same color as her hair, and she whipped her head around to avert her gaze. It seemed that the One-loving Saionji bred a little jealousy after this exchange.
What? Are you trying to act like some kind of tragic hero so you get everyone to feel sorry for you?
It was charming how her kimono flapped around, but her cold expression was terribly sadistic. Someone who was a connoisseur of that particular taste would probably water at the mouth to see it.
Quit it, Hyoko-chan. It looks like Hinata really doesn't remember.
Koizumi's soothing seemed to have the opposite effect.
What?
Saionji pouted childishly, before hiding her mouth behind her sleeve, shooting Hinata a significant look.
He's just trying to act important. Do you think maybe his talent is super pathetic and so he's just pretending not to remember?
Those words pierced Hinata's chest, perhaps deeper and more powerfully than even Saionji had intended, because Hinata himself had the vague fear that that was true. He absolutely, positively, was not pretending. But if he still didn't remember, even after all that, then maybe his talent was an inconvenient memory for him. For example, what if it was like Saionji said, and his talent was so insignificant that he would feel embarrassed to even say it out loud?
That's not true, Hinata-kun. I believe you have an amazing talent.
Komaeda called out in concern as Hinata fell silent. In that moment, Komaeda was the one person he didn't want to hear that from. Hinata's skin was pretty thick in general, but in the end, Komaeda always managed to get under it. Sure, that was just because he believed Hinata had a super high school level talent. That was why he threw away his pride and went around asking everyone about it too. But what if he went to so much trouble to prove it, and then found out Hinata's talent was worthless? It was a no-brainer. He probably wouldn't follow Hinata around anymore. And of course, he wouldn't be concerned about him anymore. Hinata was sick of it. Both Komaeda doing whatever he wanted, and himself for understanding that that was just selfishness, but hurting himself with his own imaginings anyway.
Shut up. Hinata-kun! Shut up! Shut up! Everyone shut up! Hinata-kun?
Hinata ran off with a loud shout, not looking at anyone. Using up the very last of his strength, he ran at full speed back to his own cottage. Even the light, southerly night breeze flowing in from the open window rubbed him the wrong way.
Ah, shit!
Sick of rolling around on the bed, too, Hinata grabbed his blanket and sat up. It was completely dark outside, and a glance at the clock told him it was nearly 9 p.m. Since abandoning himself to his anger, Running down the beach and secluding himself in his cottage, he'd missed both lunch and dinner, but he didn't feel hungry at all, even though he'd been exhausted body and spirit by being led around by the nose so much. He didn't feel like doing anything anymore, but if he went to sleep, he'd end up having nightmares. The dark haze causing Hinata to lose the hunger in his belly had taken human shape, crowding around Hinata as he cowered, asking innocently, "What's your talent? What's your talent? What's your talent? It's all his fault!" Just as Hinata was about to fling his blanket at the wall in anger, "You're in there, aren't you, Hinata-kun? I'm coming in!" He heard the door open and was hit with the light filtered through swaying hair. Hinata silently watched as who else but Kamase came to stand before him. The blanket made a ridiculous thump noise as it slipped from his grasp, but he didn't care about that right now. "Kamase! How did you get in here?" "Pretty careless of you, Hinata-kun. Looks like you forgot to lock your door." Shrugging his shoulders like he was the one who had been burdened, Kamase gave himself away easily. "Everyone else was looking for you, too, but I guess they were too apprehensive to even try opening the door. Or maybe it's thanks to my talent, since I wanted to see you so badly. And now, here I..." Kamase was suddenly grabbed at the base of his neck, face twisting in pain. Hinata glared with hatred at that pale face. Kamase's talent was luck, the power to obtain his desired results by transcending the law of causality altogether. And he was showing it off right now, right in front of Hinata. There was no way in hell Hinata felt like forgiving him. "It's thanks to your talent, huh? And that means you stepped in here knowing you were the one responsible for this whole situation, didn't you?" The fabric of Kamase's shirt dug into the back of his neck from Hinata's hold on it. Imagining that pain offered Hinata a cold tranquility. "I want to remember what my talent is, too. No, I want that more than anybody else!" He didn't need Kamase pointing it out to him. He was living surrounded by people with personality and talent abounds, so there was no way he wouldn't feel conscious of it at least once in a while. What could he do? He wondered. What kind of talent did he have? He didn't even care if it was helper or whatever, like Nanami had suggested. He wanted someone to tell him. He wanted to be recognized. "You're a splendid student of Hope's Peak Academy, and this is your talent." "But, Kamase, you should know better than anyone else, shouldn't you? Talent is what the students of Hope's Peak live for. It's basically what gives their lives value. But I still don't remember mine. Only me!" He tightened his grip on Kamase's shirt. The fabric dug even deeper into the flesh at the back of Kamase's neck, and it was probably painful for Kamase, but it dug into Hinata's fingers just the same, so it was painful for him too. But he still didn't feel like letting him go. "It's not something I need people clumsily butting into or mocking me for, right? Shouldn't you know that already? But you still... I'm sorry." The childish apology spilled from Kamase's mouth. The malice drained from Hinata, and he loosened his grip automatically, as Kamase made a terribly admirable face. "Sorry, Hinata-kun. It's just like you said. It was my fault. I apologize. I'm really sorry." Kamase spoke in a voice the likes of which Hinata had never heard before, and so he let go of him entirely. Kamase's stretched-out collar looked stupid, but his expression was completely serious. "But don't worry. No matter what kind of talent you have, it will at least be better than the piece of trash that's my good luck." His admirable expression did a 180, and suddenly a familiar gleam filled his eyes. "I love the hope that's born from everyone's shining talents, so I got carried away into stubbornness. I won't do anything uncalled for anymore, so I'd like you to please find it in your heart to forgive me. Oh, you probably don't want the ugly side of someone like me around anymore.
Then I really am sorry, Hinata-kun.
Kamada turned on his heel as soon as he was done speaking and left the cottage. Having been left alone in the blink of an eye, for now, Hinata just picked up the blanket that had fallen on the floor, returning it to its original position. However, he didn't lie back down, but simply sat on the bed for a while, mulling over the back and forth he'd been having with Kamada just a moment ago. From the next day on, Kamada stopped pursuing the matter of Hinata's talent. It wasn't just that he refrained from asking Hinata himself, like he did before. Nanami informed Hinata that he'd stopped going around and asking everyone else too. He actually stopped avoiding Hinata too, greeting him if they crossed paths and occasionally eating meals with him. Just like how he acted with everyone else.
He really is a selfish prick.
Hinata sighed softly as he looked at the chair where Kamada had been sitting up until just a moment ago. Excepting Kuzuryu, who liked to pretend he was a lone wolf, everyone else was still eating. But for some reason, Kamada had shoveled his meal into his mouth at an alarming speed and left. Even without that swaying hairdo bobbing around, breakfast was as bustling as ever. Since Kamada didn't have anyone he was particularly attached to, he didn't leave a strong impression on the overall atmosphere of the place whether he was there or not.
Maybe my talent really is helper.
Listening to Sumiki's cries as she was teased by Saionji, he thought instead of the boy who wasn't there. Sumiki had Koizumi and Miyoda with her, so she was probably fine for now. Kamaida's talent. Good luck. It was a frightening talent that brought him great fortune aligning with his intentions, only when an equivalent misfortune was forced upon him along with it.
Kinda like a preachy thief,
he thought idly, before countering himself with, "You've got that wrong!" Miyoda's sensitive ears and language sense must have had an effect on him. Not only did Komaida have a talent that was difficult to control, he had more of an interest in others' talents than anyone else did. Unlike Hinata, he was aware of what his own talent was, but at the same time, he looked down on himself for it, putting himself down with a bright smile on his face. He was a pain in the arse who took a lot of effort to deal with. But maybe Hinata wasn't the only one who got a glimpse of that side of him.
He has to pay for his luck and misfortune afterwards. He knew that, but he came into my cottage. But I just grabbed him and twisted his collar and tormented him.
It was the karmic justice Komaida expected from his talent when he came to apologize. Hinata furrowed his brow, looking down at his hands, reliving the pain from the fabric cutting into Komaida's skin and his own. The instant he shook his head to try and shake off the memory, he noticed something outside the window.
Komaida!
Beyond the lined-up roofs of the cottages, he saw a khaki hoodie floating above the white beach. Komaida was standing underneath a palm tree.
"Oh, Hinata-kun, where are you?"
Nanami called out to Hinata when he stood up, and he smiled briefly, waving to her.
"You're sleepy because you're full, aren't you? Sit down. I just remembered something I had to do real quick."
Hinata left the restaurant jogging, and before long he was at the beach. Yesterday, nearly everyone had been here causing a huge fuss, but today there was only Komaida.
"Hey, Komaida! Stay back!"
As soon as he called out to him, he was met with a sharp command. At first he fell speechless, and his stomach clenched in irritation. He felt himself a little narrow-minded for it, but he couldn't help thinking of how much Komaida had already pushed him around and upended his life lately. Just when he thought he shouldn't have come after him, and he should have just let it go, a coconut crashed into Komaida's head from the palm tree with a great loud bong!
Ow! All right, it's okay now. What is it, Hinata-kun?
Komaida smiled and drew closer, rubbing at the large bump.
No, You ate super quickly and left, so I was wondering what was up. Today, it was all my favorite things for breakfast. I thought there were going to be aftershocks soon, so I left so that I didn't drag anyone else into it. But I think it's fine now,
he said, unreserved, gazing in wonder. In that moment, Hinata felt the scales of his heart before, as unsteady and erratic as Kamaida's hairstyle and behavior, fall decisively to one side. He took a short breath and then broached the topic as calmly as he could.
Hey, Kamaida, about my talent. Huh? Oh, it's fine. Sorry, I wasn't trying to intrude in your business.
Kamaida interrupted to answer preemptively, looking apologetic from the bottom of his heart. It seemed that, just like he'd promised, he really had no intention of digging for Hinata's talent. For as much as Kamaida had persistently, one-sidedly pushed Hinata around, his meek behavior now was embarrassing.
Maybe I really am the super high school level helper,
he thought self-deprecatingly, his stomach tying itself in knots.
I was thinking about why I can't remember my talent, and, maybe, possibly, it might be a talent I can't use without you. Huh? Look, like super high school level friend or something like that.
He'd apparently been staring, unconsciously. As soon as he noticed, he looked down at the tips of Kamaida's shoes. Sweat suddenly started running down his back, but if he told Kamaida that he was embarrassed, Kamaida would probably get unnecessarily timid in return. So he forcefully raised his chin again, awaiting a response, coolly locking eyes with him.
What? How embarrassing. What the hell?
Hinata's tone of voice abruptly did a 180, but Kamaida was exceedingly calm.
I mean, you seem pretty embarrassed, Hinata-kun. Your face is all red, you know,
he pointed out with a serious expression, and Hinata could feel his cheeks getting gradually redder and redder. He ducked his head hastily, but heard a mystified voice chasing after him to follow up with,
Can't you please give me a break already? It's true that I love you and everyone else overflowing with talent, and I'm happy that you would consider someone like me as a friend, but no matter how much...
Suddenly, another bong rang out, interrupting the fluid speech, and Kamaida promptly collapsed.
Hey, Kamaida! Ugh.
Another bump could be seen, swelling up on top of the previous bump on Kamaida's head. He should have been used to these regular payments of bad luck, but it seemed that they had more of an effect coming one right after the other. Hinata reached out a hand to help Kamaida up, but Kamaida narrowed his eyes at Hinata, pouting,
What are you grinning for? It's kind of creepy.
Well, you know.
Even Kamaida's bitter words just had the opposite effect right now. Hinata gazed down at the two coconuts that had rolled onto the beach, laughing under his breath.
If you suddenly got visited by bad luck, then that means you were happy about our conversation just now, weren't you?
Kamaida silently shook off Hinata's hand at the intense teasing. By the way he sulkily turned his head away and walked off, he was clearly angry. That made Hinata even more amused, and strangely happy. So he followed after him.
Hey, do you want me to patch you up? It's fine. I'll get Sumiki-san to do it. Don't be like that. We're super high school level friends, aren't we? That was all you. Don't drag me into it.
The more Kamaida got irritated, the more Hinata couldn't stop smiling. He even felt like he finally understood why Kamaida cared about him at all. Kamaida, who always went overboard flattering everyone around him, constantly saying that he didn't even come up to their feet. His extreme humility became a wall between him and everyone else, concealing his true feelings. But now, Hinata felt like he could see the other side of the wall, just a little. Beneath the mask of devotion, or even religious fanaticism, there was the glimpse of a smile, of someone who was moved to be taken seriously as a friend, of nothing more than a boy around his age who pouted when he was teased.
Maybe one day, I really will become super high school level friends with this guy.
Hinata followed after Kamaida, holding that small hope in his heart. The end. Footnotes. 1. The Drifters were a band that had a very popular comedic variety show. Quoting from the article, Its lowbrow humor and slapstick comedy made it popular with children, much to the dismay of parents. 2. Jumping dogeza, kowtow, is apparently a thing, though it's a comedic meme. Sliding dogeza is here too. 3. Preachy thief, sekyo goto, was coined for a specific criminal, Tsumaki Matsukichi, who broke into people's homes, tied them up, and then lectured them about how they should avoid crime in the future as he robbed them. I felt there were a number of ways this could be taken in context, so I decided to preserve the full reference. You have been listening to Danganronpa 1-2 Beautiful Days, an official anthology of non-canonical fanfictions, all of which have been translated by Kamase Megane, narrated by Alex Redgrave. I'd like to give special thanks to Sirius Seiko from the Game Surgery team for giving me the opportunity to narrate these stories, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to them. If you wish to hear more of my works, you can find me on Amazon Audible, where you can find my official published titles that I have narrated. Alternatively, you can find my YouTube channel, A Redgrave, where I publish more of my voice acting works. Currently, I'm in the midst of a Final Fantasy Tactics fan dub, and I appreciate it if all of you who are fans of Final Fantasy and this hugely underrated game to give it a look and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.